Since the days of Old Epic, way back in the era of 2nd edition 40k, which was when I first got into the game, I have always loved the look of the Knight Paladin. It's just always been one of those models that really appealed to me the most in the entire setting, and so of course the 10th edition faction focus for the Imperial Knights was always going to catch my attention, and as I expected, I am fully in love with them. I love the rules they show off today, I love the feel, the theme, the idea, just the way in which an Imperial Knight army seems like it is going to play in the new edition just appeals to me on every single level, in every single fibre of my being. And so let's take a look at these, and hopefully you will enjoy what we are seeing today as much as I did. As ever, we start off by looking at their army rule, which for the Imperial Knights is the Code Chivalric, the idea which was brought in their latest 9th edition book and kind of really plays into the idea of knights being this old Bretonian style list of knights where they have sort of codes and goals and quests and stuff that they need to fulfill to become honourable. And again, they are bringing that back into 10th, and I really do love that. This is a rule where after you've selected the mission for your game, it lets you choose one of 2 oaths for your army, and they have Lay Low the Tyrant, which gives your army reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1 when they shoot or fight, and a deed which is completed if you kill the enemy warlord. Or you can take Reclaim the Realm, which gives you +1 to move, advance and charge, and your deed for this is completed when you control 1 or more objectives in your enemy deployment zone. Now, the oath part of these rules is constant throughout the battle. You get those rerolls to hit or the +1 to your movement and charge and whatever throughout the entire battle. But when you complete your deed, that part of the rule, your army becomes honoured. And that nets you immediately a very tasty bonus of 3 extra CP, which is really good in 10th edition. And then it also has some other benefits for your army in some various other rules, which we will see as we go through this preview. But I think in general, just straight off the bat, this is a really solid set of army rules. I think Lay Low the Tyrant is better overall in terms of what you get. It's going to give you some really good reliability on your weapons, which will mostly be already hitting and wounding on 2s or 3s, so avoiding those pesky 1s with those rerolls is going to give you so much more reassurance in getting those hits and those wounds through, and it's going to be really helpful in making your army do as much damage as it possibly can. But Reclaim the Realm is still very good. Having extra movement and charges is going to help if you are running a very melee focused list, and I also think that the deed part of Reclaim the Realm is arguably a bit easier to do. You are going to be going up and wanting to get the enemy's objectives anyway, so you're probably going to get the deed part of Reclaim the Realm done a little bit sooner than Lay Low the Tyrant, because your enemy can potentially hide their warlord or try and keep him away from you if he knows that you are going to be gunning for him to fulfill your deed. The detachment rule is called Indomitable Heroes, and this will be a familiar buff for especially you Tyrannus players. It gives your models in your army a 6-up Feel No Pain, and then when your army becomes honoured when you fulfill your deed, as we saw just now, this will bump it to a 5-up Feel No Pain. So you can have a load of super tough, incredibly high wound models, potentially with a 5-up Feel No Pain, and that's just going to make them unbelievably difficult to shift. But I think even the non-honoured version, the 6-up Feel No Pain, is pretty decent. I think a lot of people overlook it because on a 1 or 2 wound model it's not that great, but when your models are sort of 12 wounds plus, that does essentially net you at least an extra couple of wounds just by making those saves, and then when it does get boosted to the 5+, even your armigers are going to be just so unbelievably hard for your opponent to take out. So in general, especially compared to what we saw yesterday with the Death Guard, this is the kind of army and detachment rule that I really like. They are both separate, they do different things, but they complement each other so well. They help you shore up either your damage or your movement, depending on how you want to play your army, and then the detachment rule really brings a nice buff to your durability, so they all just come together and mesh together so incredibly well and let you run your army exactly how you want to run it. On the unit spotlight front, we see both the Warglaive, who is now toughness 10 with a 3-up save, and has, again, as we've seen on a few other vehicles, that superb OC value of 8. They also have the battle line keyword, so these now are officially your quote-unquote troops in 10th edition, which is a really nice change. It was always annoying having to kind of work your way around the super heavy detachment in previous editions. Now that these are your battle line, it should be a lot easier to kind of build a knight army and not have to fiddle around with too much to get it legal on the board. But in addition to that, they also have some solid rules for themselves. The melee chain cleaver they have is still strength 10 and 3 damage. It has lost a pip of rend, dropping to -3 on the strike profile, but the sweep profile has actually got better. It's now strength 8 rather than strength 6, and they also gain a rule called Impetuous Charge, which gives them sustained hits 1 after they've made a charge. So you can rush in and potentially get 16 hits with that anti-infantry profile, which really is not too shabby at all. They also still have their thermal spear for their ranged weapon, which has actually dropped a bit. It's gone from 30 inches down to 24, but it is now strength 12 instead of strength 9, and instead of doing d6 plus 2 damage in half range, it now has the Melter 4 rule, so within 12 inches it will be d6 plus 4 damage. So I would say overall, it's had a nice little improvement. Yes, you've lost a bit of range, but the damage you can put through is actually higher now. And then we also see the Chainbreaker himself. We get to see Canis Rex, and straight up in melee, he can potentially do 90 damage in a single combat phase to an opponent, which is, I think, the most we've seen out of any vehicle or character in the game, the 10th edition preview so far. I could be wrong. Maybe the Baneblade could do more, but certainly he is absolutely terrifying in combat. The general knight profile seems to be T12 with 22 wounds and a 3-up save, so they are pretty damn durable still, although they're not quite the T14 that the Orc Stomper has and that I thought they might be. But in addition to the generic knight profile, Canis does of course have his own unique rules and weaponry, because he is a named character in the army. And as mentioned in melee, he is really scary. His fist, the Freedom's Hand, is a whopping strength 20 on the strike profile with -3 AP and a rather terrifying 9 damage. He also gets 5 attacks with it, and he has sustained hits 1, so he can potentially get up to 10 hits, which could turn into that aforementioned 90 damage. Obviously that would be only if you rolled perfectly, but still, the potential is there. And then even if you're being bogged down by a lot of smaller infantry, the sweep profile is still really scary too. It's got 10 attacks, again with sustained hits 1, so we can get potentially up to 20 hits with this, and it is strength 10, -2 AP, and 3 damage. So even in the sweep profile, he is going to be able to kill a lot of enemies that may be trying to bog him down. He also comes with some unique rules which are just making him even better. He can have a stratagem used on him once per turn for 0 CP, which in 10th edition, which as I've mentioned many times, seems to be a lot less CP heavy, is a really strong ability to have. Being able to have a 0 CP strat used on you is going to save you so that you can use those command points for other things. And then on top of that, he has the Chainbreaker rule, which lets him get critical hits on a 5+ rather than the usual 6. So his sustained hits will be proccing on 5+ rather than on 6, so he's going to get a load more attacks through than your opponent may be expecting. On the range front, his Las Impulsor keeps its dual profile. It can either be d6 shots at strength 14, -3 AP and 4 damage, or 2d6 shots at strength 7, -1 AP and 2 damage. Again, it also has sustained hits and blast, so both can be getting a good number of hits onto the enemy. It's not bad, it's reasonably good at either anti-infantry or anti-armor, but it's not the most terrifying weapon we've seen, and I really do think that being in melee is where Canis is gonna shine, and he really is just gonna demolish almost anything that he gets into combat with. It's also worth mentioning at this point that both the Knights and the Armigers both look to be keeping their 5-up invuln, but still only against ranged attacks, so you are still potentially going to struggle somewhat against those melee heavy armies that can get into combat with you and can chew through your armor save, but the 5-up invuln is still a nice boost to help you get into combat and survive enemy shooting, And then of course, when you get your 6 or your 5 up Feel No Pain from your detachment rule, that is going to give you so much more durability at both range and when you get into melee. We had 2 weapons shown off in the spotlight today, the first being the ever popular but usually somewhat underwhelming in practice Thundercoil Harpoon. This has gone from strength 16, minus 6 AP, 10 damage, and doing an extra 3 mortal wounds when it wounds, to now being strength 24. It still keeps minus 6 AP, which is insane in 10th edition and is by far the highest AP we've seen on anything so far, and it is a flat 12 damage. So it got some very, very nice boosts. It's still 18-inch range, and it also has the rules of anti-monster and anti-vehicle 4+, and it has devastating wounds. So this thing, despite only being one shot still, is now hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s if you've gone for Lay Low the Tyrant, and wounding almost everything on 2s, again re-rolling 1s with Lay Low the Tyrants, and then on a 4+ against monsters or vehicles is going to be doing a critical wound, which alongside devastating wounds means on a 4+ to wound you will also be doing that mortal wound. So all in, to bring it all together, this thing can still do 13 damage in total. It is just, in my opinion, even more reliable, especially if, as I said, you go for Lay Low the Tyrant, where those reroll 1s to hit and to wound are pretty much perfect for this gun. And it still keeps that insane minus 6 AP, which means it's going to push through almost every single armor value in the entire game in 10th edition. So I think it's still one shot, it still is potentially swingy, and that may put a lot of people off, but I think it's a lot more reliable than it has been in the past. The rapid fire battle cannon also got shown off, and this has also had, in my opinion, a very nice boost. It's now strength 10 instead of strength 8. It is only minus 1 AP, but it still does that solid 3 damage, so it's still relatively good. And then on top of that, it has rapid fire, wait for it here, it has rapid fire D6 plus 3, and it's D6 plus 3 shots. So at 72 inches, which is the range of this gun, this will be putting out D6 plus 3 shots. But when you get into half range, so 36 inches and closer, this is going to become 2D6 plus 6 strength 10 shots. And it has blast. So if you fired this gun at, say, 30 orc boys, maybe not the best target, but if that's the only thing that's in range and they're on an objective you want, you will be getting 2d6 plus 6 plus an extra 6 shots because of blast, so an average of around 19 shots. And to me, that's just hilarious, because you'll be hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s at strength 10, so you're going to just be killing a huge swathe of those enemy orc boys, and even into like a 10-man squad or just an individual vehicle, you're still going to be getting a good number of shots, because 2d6 plus 6 is still an average of 13 shots, so even against sort of individual targets, you're going to be getting a boatload of shots into them. And at strength 10, minus 1 AP is not the greatest, I'll admit, but strength 10, minus 1, 3 damage, you are going to be putting a dent in almost everything. So again, this is a really nice upgrade, I think, and I think the Paladin is looking like a fairly solid choice going into 10th edition. On top of that, they also showed us 2 stratagems, so they really are giving us quite a lot today. They showed us Shoulder the Burden, which is an unbelievably cool strat. I really, really do love this. You use it on an injured knight, and in your command phase, which is when you use it, you can give that injured knight +1 move, +1 toughness, +1 to their save, +1 to their leadership, and +1 to their OC, and +1 to hit. So that's potentially a toughness 13 knight with a 2-up save, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s to hit and wound with, again, Lay Low the Tyrant, which is just incredibly spicy. Now, you can only use this strat once per battle, but when you become honoured, you can use it again. So after you've completed your deed, you can potentially have 2 knights with this boost on, and that is going to really, really improve their efficiency on the battlefield. So for me, this is just a really cool, fluffy strat, and I love that. Not that there's a downside to it, but the fact that there's a restriction on it, that you can only use it once, it really does play into the idea of knights being these lone, individual, chivalric heroes, and buffing them up to the 9s, and almost in a sort of Hero Hammer style way, which I've always been a really big fan of, so I do love this. It is pricey at 2 CP, but giving a knight that kind of boost to their output and their durability, I think will be a winning move in quite a lot of instances. The other stratagem they show off is Trophy Claim. This is only 1 CP, so it's nice and cheap. And then when an enemy shoots or fights an enemy monster or vehicle, you get +1 to wound. And if you destroy that enemy unit, you have to select an enemy monster or vehicle, but it's always going to be the one you're going to shoot or hit in melee anyway, of course. But when you destroy, or if you destroy that enemy unit, you gain a command point. But if you fail to kill it, if you fail your vow, you cannot use this strat again during the battle. So again, it's a really fun, fluffy, exciting mechanic of adding these sort of vows and these chivalric quests that you can go and try and achieve with your knights, and really plays into their backstory and lore. And it's just one of the reasons why I love knights so much. And I'm really glad that GW are putting that sort of extra level of lore and backstory into even their stratagems, just to help you get in the mindset of your knights being this questing force. I really, really do love it. They did also very sneakily at the end mention that there are some bondsman style buffs that you may know from the 9th edition codex still present in the game. They mentioned that paladins can give out lethal hits and a lance, presumably to smaller armigers around them, and gallants can give rerolls to charge and to hit. So it does still seem like a good mix of some big knights supported by small armigers may be the way to go for an Imperial Knights list. Whether that will be the same for the Chaos Knights, who knows, but certainly for the Imperial Knights, I think a mixed list of big knights and armigers is going to allow you to get the most out of all of your army abilities and buffs. And to be honest with you, I am all here for it. So that's the knights. You may be able to tell, but I love these rules. These are just, it's almost, I don't mean to, kick them while they're down, but to me, looking through these and then looking through the Death Guard, it's almost like these two armies were designed for a completely different game. Like the Death Guard just seems so monotonous and boring and narrow focused, whereas this seems to give you so much option and choice and fluff and lore and kind of the ability to get in the mindset of being part of a questing knight force. Every single rule they've shown off today I think is really cool, really fun, and they seem to be fairly powerful, to be honest. Like even the Warglaive, which I think out of everything they've shown today, that's probably the weakest thing that they've shown off. Even that seems to be a really solid, good battle line choice for your army. So I'm just really excited to get my knights out again. I've got a beautifully commission painted army ready to go, and I cannot wait to bring them on the board again. I might put a picture up on the screen, I don't know, maybe, we'll see. But I'm really looking forward to seeing the Imperial Knights in all of their glory once again. But as always, I would love to know what you thought of these rules. Do you like them as much as me, or am I getting a little bit ahead of myself? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.